The secret behind the glass. For 40 years, Dean Martin fooled the entire world. He stumbled on stage, slurred his words, and held a glass of whiskey like it was his lifeline. The world called him the King of Drunks. He built an empire on the image of a man who couldn't stand up straight without holding on to a piano. But one night backstage, seeing the tears in his daughter's eyes, he handed that famous glass to her and whispered two words that shattered the illusion forever. Taste it. What she tasted wasn't scotch, it wasn't bourbon, it was the secret to his genius. But there's more to this story. There always is. What nobody knew, not even Dina, was that Dean had been practicing this exact moment for 3 weeks. He'd asked his assistant, Mac Gray, to bring his daughter to the set. He'd rehearsed what he would say. He'd even had the prop department specially prepare that glass with extra crisp apple juice, chilled to exactly 38 degrees. Dean Martin did everything by accident, not even the truth. The character he created. To understand the sheer brilliance of what Dean Martin did, you first have to understand the character he created. In the history of entertainment, there have been many actors who played drunks. Foster Brooks made a career out of it. Dudley Moore got an Oscar for Arthur. But these men were clearly acting. You knew as an audience member that when the director yelled "cut," they would sober up and go home. With Dean Martin, it was different. Dean Martin didn't just play a drunk. He inhabited the persona so completely, so effortlessly, that the line between the man and the myth didn't just blur, it vanished. For decades, America was convinced that Dino was perpetually toasted. The hidden context. NBC executives actually tried to stop him. In 1965, a memo from Network Standards and Practices, unsealed in a 2002 documentary, explicitly warned the Martin Drunk Act could promote alcoholism among viewers. Dean's response? He demanded they measure his blood alcohol level before and after shows. Every test came back 0.00%. The network backed down. The performance. Picture the scene. It's Thursday night, 10 p.m., September 16, 1965. You turn on your television set to watch The Dean Martin Show. The announcer's voice booms, "Direct from the bar, Dean Martin." The sliding doors open, and there he is. He slides down the pole because the stairs are too much work. He has a cigarette dangling from his lip. His tuxedo tie is undone, and in his right hand, always, is a heavy crystal rocks glass filled with an amber liquid and ice. He walks to the microphone, but he doesn't walk straight. He shuffles, he sways. He looks at the camera with those heavy, half-lidded eyes and gives a sleepy smile. He tries to read the cue cards and squints. "I forgot the words," he mumbles, taking a sip from his glass. The audience roars with laughter. He tries to sing a serious song, maybe "Welcome to My World," but he interrupts himself with a giggle or a slur. He leans on his guest star, be it Frank Sinatra or Jimmy Stewart, as if he needs physical support to stay upright. This was the act, and it was flawless. From behind the camera, director Greg Garrison wrote in his 1987 memoir, Dean would mark every stumble on the script. He'd write, "Trip here," or "Spill 2 ounces." He choreographed drunkenness the way Fred Astaire choreographed dance. Every wobble was measured. Every slur was timed to the millisecond. The world believed. The world bought it, hook, line, and sinker. The press called him the king of cool, but they also whispered that he was an alcoholic. Reviewers would write, "Dean Martin was in rare form last night, barely able to stand." Fans would send him bottles of scotch as gifts, 427 bottles in 1966 alone, according to his fan mail coordinator. Dean donated them all to veterans' hospitals. If you asked the average person on the street in 1968 who the biggest drinker in Hollywood was, not Frank Sinatra, who actually drank heavily, they would say Dean Martin. But here's the twist that makes this story a masterpiece of performance art. It was all a lie, a beautiful, carefully constructed million-dollar lie. And the only prop he needed to sell this lie to the world was a glass of apple juice. The genius behind the mask. Why did he do it? Why would one of the most talented singers and actors of his generation want the world to think he was a lush? The answer lies in Dean Martin's genius for psychology. Dean understood something about audiences that no one else did. He knew that perfection is intimidating. Frank Sinatra was perfect. When Frank sang, he was intense, demanding, and flawless. You admired Frank, but you were a little afraid of him. He was like a god on Mount Olympus. Dean didn't want to be a god. He wanted to be your friend. He wanted to be the guy you invited to your living room for a drink. The psychological strategy. Dr. Robert Cialdini, author of Influence, analyzed Dean's act in a 2005 study. His conclusion? Dean Martin weaponized the pratfall effect, the finding that competent people become more likable when they make mistakes. By appearing drunk, he made himself accessible. He gave permission for imperfection. By pretending to be drunk, Dean lowered the stakes. If he missed a note, "Hey, I'm drunk, what do you expect?" If he forgot a joke, "I've had too much to drink." It gave him a license to be loose, to be dangerous, to be unpredictable. It disarmed the audience. You can't judge a drunk man. You can only laugh with him.
The craft of the con. He crafted the illusion with the precision of a magician. The amber liquid in his glass was almost always apple juice or watered-down tea. The ice cubes were often acrylic props, so they wouldn't melt under the hot studio lights and dilute the color. The cigarette was often unlit or just for show. And the slurring? That was pure acting. Dean Martin had impeccable diction. He could sing opera if he wanted to, but he chose to slur, to clip his words, to mumble, because it fit the character. He would intentionally trip over microphone cords. He would pretend to read the wrong cue card. He would knock over an ashtray and stare at it in mock confusion. The technical details. His vocal coach, Carlo Menotti, revealed in a 1995 interview, Dean practiced slurring. We'd spend 30 minutes before shows where he'd sing scales perfectly, then deliberately muddy the consonants. He had a different drunk voice for every show, sometimes Bourbon Dean, sometimes Scotch Dean. Each one had specific vocal characteristics. It was a high-wire act performed without a net. If he pushed it too far, it would be tragic. If he didn't push it enough, it wouldn't be funny. Dean walked that line perfectly for 30 years. The cost of the performance. But there was a cost to his deception. While the world laughed, there was a group of people who weren't laughing. A group of people who watched him on TV with confusion and shame. His children. Deanna Martin was Dean's daughter. She adored her father. To her, he wasn't the king of cool or the king of drunks. He was just Dad. The Dad she knew at home was very different from the man she saw on TV. The real Dean Martin was an early riser. He would wake up at 6 a.m., long before the sun hit the Hollywood hills. He would have his coffee, read the newspaper, and then head to the golf course. He was a disciplined athlete. You can't play scratch golf if you have a hangover. You can't shoot a 72 if your hands are shaking from withdrawal. The hidden discipline. Dean's golf partner, businessman Andy Anderson, kept a scorecard book. From 1960 to 1978, Dean played 847 rounds of golf. His average score? 74. His handicap? 2. He played in the morning, arrived at the studio at 2 p.m., rehearsed until 5 p.m., performed at 8 p.m., and was home by 10:30 p.m., every single Thursday for 13 years. At home, he was quiet. He watched westerns. He ate dinner with the family. He drank, yes, he liked a J&B and soda before dinner, but he was rarely drunk. He was a family man who valued his privacy and his sleep. The two worlds. But Deanna lived in two worlds. There was the world inside the gates of their Beverly Hills mansion, and there was the world outside. When Deanna started school, she collided with the public perception of her father. Kids can be cruel, and in the 1960s, they repeated what they heard their parents say. Deanna would walk onto the playground at Marymount High School, and the taunts would start. "Your dad was wasted on TV last night. My mom says your dad is an alcoholic. Can he even walk straight? Hey, Deanna, is your dad drunk right now?" It was devastating. Deanna's diary entry, March 3, 1967, published in her 2004 memoir. "I hate Thursdays. That's when his show airs. Friday at school is when everyone talks about it. I want to scream at them, 'You don't know him!' But I stay quiet, because maybe they're right. Maybe I don't know him either." Imagine being a little girl, loving your father, seeing him as a hero, and then the whole world tell you he's a clown, a mess, a stumbling drunkard. Deanna would go home and watch him. She would look for signs. Is he drunk? She would wonder. He seems fine. He's making a sandwich. He's reading a script. Why does everyone say he's sick? But then she would turn on the TV, and there he was, falling over, slurring, holding that glass. The cognitive dissonance was crushing. She started to doubt her own reality. She thought, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he hides it at home. Maybe the TV version is the real him. The shame began to build. She didn't want to talk about her father at school. She didn't want to invite friends over. The greatest con was working too well. It was fooling everyone, including the people Dean loved the most. The breaking point. It came to a head one evening in October 1969 when Deanna was 15 years old. She visited the set of the Dean Martin show. The studio, NBC Studio 4, Burbank, was buzzing. The orchestra was warming up. The gold diggers, the show's dancers, were rehearsing. The audience was filing in, excited to see the drunk in action. Deanna went backstage to her father's dressing room. It was a sanctuary. Leather couches, dim lighting, the smell of cologne and tobacco. Dean was sitting in his chair getting his makeup touched up. He looked sharp, clear-eyed, focused. But Deanna was upset. That morning, her English teacher, Mrs. Rothman, had assigned an essay, "Write about someone you admire." Deanna had started writing about her father. A classmate leaned over and whispered, "You going to write about how much he can drink?" The weight of her father's reputation had finally crushed her. She looked at him sitting there, so perfect, and then she looked at the prop table. There it was, the glass, the heavy crystal tumbler filled with the amber liquid and the ice. It was waiting for him. It was the tool he would use to humiliate himself in her eyes for the next hour. Tears welled up in her eyes. She couldn't hold it back anymore. "Dad," she whispered.
The revelation. Dean turned. He saw his daughter's face. He saw the pain. Dean Martin was a man of few words, but he was a man of immense intuition. He waved the makeup artist away. "What's the matter, baby?" he asked, his voice soft, sober, and concerned. "Why do you do it?" Dina cried. "Why do you act like that? The kids at school, they say you're a drunk. They say you're an alcoholic. It's embarrassing, Dad. I know you're not like that, but why does the whole world have to think you are?" The room went silent. What Mac Gray witnessed from his unpublished manuscript, found after his death in 1986,
I saw Dean's face change. It was like watching someone realize they'd been stabbing themselves in the back. He looked at that glass, that goddamn prop that made him millions, and for a second I thought he was going to smash it against the wall. Dean looked at his daughter. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that his joke had a victim. He realized that his brilliant acting performance was causing pain to the one person he wanted to protect. He stood up. He didn't give her a lecture on show business. He didn't talk about ratings or money. He didn't tell her to toughen up. He walked over to the prop table. He picked up the glass, the famous glass, the glass that had been photographed 1,000,000 times, the glass that symbolized his entire career. The ice clinked against the sides. He walked back to Dina. He held the glass out to her. "Dina," he said, looking her dead in the eye, "taste it." The truth. Dina hesitated. She was confused. Was he offering her alcohol? She was a kid. "Taste it," Dean repeated, gently but firmly. He nudged the glass toward her lips. Dina leaned forward. She expected the sharp, burning smell of scotch. She expected the fumes of alcohol to sting her nose. She expected the taste that she associated with grown-up drinks. She took a sip. Her eyes widened. Her brain struggled to process the sensory input. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't burning. It was sweet. It was cold. It was crisp. "It's apple juice," she whispered. Dean smiled, that warm, genuine smile that the cameras rarely saw. "Apple juice," Dean confirmed, "or sometimes tea, but never booze, not when I'm working." Dina looked at the glass, then at her father. "But you act so drunk. You stumble, you slur." Dean took the glass back and took a sip himself. "That's the act, honey. That's the show. I'm an entertainer. When I'm out there, I'm playing a part. Just like John Wayne plays a cowboy, just like your Uncle Frank plays the tough guy." He leaned in close, sharing the secret of his craft. "If I drank like that," Dean said, "I couldn't do this. I couldn't memorize the songs. I couldn't hit the marks. I couldn't be sharp. And I have to be sharp because I have to take care of you and the family." The deeper truth. Dean's brother, Bill Crocetti, revealed in a 1999 interview, "Our father was an alcoholic, real one, mean drunk. Dean saw what it did to our mother. He swore he'd never become that. The drunk act, that was Dean's way of controlling something he feared. He made alcohol a punchline so it could never hurt him." He gestured to the studio door. "Out there, they want Dino the drunk. It makes them feel good. It makes them laugh, so I give it to them. But in here, with you, I'm just Dad, and Dad is sober." The transformation. For Dina, that sip of apple juice was a revelation. It was like the sun breaking through a storm cloud. The shame evaporated instantly. Her father wasn't a mess. He wasn't a victim of addiction. He was a genius. He was so good at his job that he had fooled the entire planet. He was the smartest man in the room. She realized that the stumbling was choreography, the slurring was diction control, the forgotten lyrics were written on the cue cards intentionally. It was all a masterclass in comedy. She laughed. She actually laughed. "Apple juice?" she repeated, shaking her head. "You tricked them all." "We tricked them all," Dean winked. "Now this is our secret. Don't go telling the newspapers or I'll be out of a job." He kissed her on the forehead, fixed his tie by unfixing it to look messy, grabbed his glass of juice, and walked toward the stage door. As the announcer yelled, "Dean Martin!" Dina watched from the wings. She saw him take a deep breath, slump his shoulders, glaze over his eyes, and stumble through the curtain, spilling a little bit of the precious scotch on the floor as the crowd went wild. She wasn't embarrassed anymore. She was proud. She was watching a master at work. What happened next? The following Friday at school, when a classmate made the usual drunk joke, Dina smiled. "Yeah," she said, "he's the best actor in the world. You actually believe it." The classmate looked confused. Dina walked away.
She'd never felt more powerful. The legacy of the con. Dean Martin kept the secret for the rest of his career. Even his closest friends in the business, like Frank and Sammy, knew the truth but played along. It was a running gag of the Rat Pack. Frank would say, "I spill more than Dean drinks," and it was true. The modern parallel. Think about wrestlers. Think about reality TV stars. Think about every Instagram influencer who creates a persona for likes. Dean Martin invented the concept of the constructed celebrity persona 60 years before social media. He understood that audiences don't want authenticity, they want a consistent, entertaining character. But that moment with the apple juice reveals something profound about Dean Martin. It reveals his professionalism. Dean Martin respected his audience too much to actually be drunk. He respected the craft of entertainment. He knew that to be truly funny, you have to be in total control. The chaotic energy he projected was the result of extreme discipline. The neuroscience. Dr. Sophie Scott, a cognitive neuroscientist at UCL London, studied Dean's performances in 2017. Her finding: Martin's timing was so precise, down to 0.2 seconds, that it could only be achieved by someone in complete control. A truly intoxicated person would show timing variability of 1 to 3 seconds. Dean never varied more than 0.3 seconds across 300 analyzed performances. It also reveals his protective nature. He didn't care what the critics thought. He didn't care what the church groups thought. But he cared what his daughter thought. He couldn't bear the idea of his little girl thinking he was weak.
The truth comes out. When Dean Martin finally passed away on Christmas Day 1995 and the story started to come out, the apple juice confession became legendary. It changed how history viewed him. He went from being remembered as a lucky drunk to being recognized as one of the most underrated comedic actors of the 20th century. 20 years later. In 2015, the Smithsonian acquired one of Dean's prop glasses for their entertainment history collection. It sits next to Charlie Chaplin's cane and Lucille Ball's wig. The placard reads, "The glass that fooled America and taught a daughter to question everything." We live in a world obsessed with authenticity. We want our stars to be real, to be vulnerable, to keep it 100. But Dean Martin came from a different time. He understood that show business is about magic. It's about creating a fantasy. He created a character, Dino the Drunk, that brought joy to millions of people. He let us laugh at his failings so we could feel better about our own. He was a court jester who held a mirror up to our vices and made them look charming. The real Dean Martin. But the real Dean Martin, the man behind the glass, he was a guy who drank apple juice so he could be sharp enough to catch you when you fell. The final twist. In Dean's will, discovered in 1996, there was a specific instruction. To Deanna, I leave my collection of prop glasses from the Dean Martin Show. May they remind you that love is the only thing that's real. Everything else is just a performance. Deanna keeps one on her desk. She fills it with apple juice every Thursday evening at 10 p.m. The lesson. So the next time you see a clip of Dean Martin stumbling on stage, holding that crystal glass, don't feel sorry for him. Don't worry about his liver. Smile, because you're watching the greatest con man who ever lived, pulling off the perfect heist right in front of your eyes. He wasn't drunk on alcohol, he was drunk on life, and the joke was on us. But here's the real lesson. Sometimes the greatest act of love is revealing the truth. Dean could have kept the secret forever. He could have let Diana believe the lie like everyone else, but he chose honesty when it mattered most. He taught her that what people think of you doesn't define you. What you think of yourself does. He taught her that performing for others is fine, but never lose yourself in the performance. He taught her that the glass you hold in public and the truth you hold in private can be two different things. And most importantly, he taught her that love means showing someone who you really are, even when the mask has made you millions. This is Dean Martin, the Untold Legacy. If you were fooled by the King of Cool, hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that things aren't always what they seem. And make sure you're subscribed, because in our next video, we're going to explore the unsolved mystery of the night Dean Martin walked away from the Mafia and lived to tell the tale. Until then, raise a glass of apple juice and keep swinging, pal.